This is a little concerning now. Joan, I have 6:30. I'm going to start the webinar.
Okay.
Our presenter isn't here. And most of both.
Well, Victor has work commitments tonight.
Gotcha.
So he said that he may, but more than likely not.
Well, our presenter isn't here yet either.
Did we get RSVPs? Were most people planning to be here?
We don't ask for RSVPs from board members. We got a thank you for the link from the presenter. Joan, you want to give it a couple of minutes? We should at least call roll,
Well,
see what we got. We have our presenter though.
Walks was after education, wasn't what, am I right?
They're both meeting tonight. It's a joint meeting.
Yes.
Welcome, Marielle.
Oh, hi.
Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
We
Hi.
haven't started our
There
meeting
you go.
yet.
Very good. Thank
will-
you for your picture.
You're welcome. I like to hide in the background until I'm asked to speak. I don't want to bother anybody by popping up. So,
Well, you are our entire agenda tonight, so
oh,
you're
how
welcome to stay with
thrilling.
us.
Okay. Oh, well, that's really nice.
So, but
Yeah.
we haven't started yet, so
No
just give us.
worries at all. I'm here. I'm really excited to speak with you. So thank you so much.
Are you going to show us a presentation or do you need screen control?
Yes, I do. It actually looks like I may be able to share. It
You
looks
have
like I
a
have
button,
screen
but I have
share.
to give you permission.
Oh, understood.
So
Yes, please.
once we start the meeting, I'll be happy to give you permission.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Hi. How are you?
I think that's Johanna. Hi, Johanna.
Oh, whoops. I'm sorry. I thought I was muted.
You said hello to
Saying
everyone.
hello. Hello, everybody. And also hello to my child who just walked in.
So hello for all of us. Joan, I have 5 minutes after our start time. Do you want me to call attendance?
Well, doesn't look like the education committee is here.
Well, you're on the education committee too, so you count.
Yeah.
I think we got a couple of members though.
All right, well, it's 6:35. Call the roll, Jeremy.
All
We
right,
can
thank you.
always call it again.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to mute everyone now. This is a joint committee meeting between Education, Youth, and Parks. And so I'm going to call the roll. When you hear your name, please unmute yourself, acknowledge your name, then mute yourself again. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I'm not going to call your name, but I am going to write it down. We are going to start with the Education Committee. Cesar Zuniga. Cesar Zuniga. Sylvia Augusto. Amal Afzal. Alberto Ortiz Almeida. Joan Body.
Yeah,
Thank you. Cynthia Felix. Kenny Guan. Nicole Huang.
Yeah, here.
Thank you. John Johnston. Beverly Kleinman.
Present.
Thank you. Aurelius Martinez. Marilyn Melman. We will move to the Parks Committee. Victor Swinton. Joan Body.
yeah,
Thank you. Sylvia Augusto. Johanna Bjorken.
Here.
Thank you. Joseph Canali. Christina Das. Mary Jo Eister.
Here.
Thank you. Nicole Huang.
Here.
Thank you. John Fontillis. John Johnston. Gabino Morales.
Here.
Thank you. Daniel Murphy. Jennifer Yip.
Present.
Thank you. Joan, roll has been called.
okay, thank you, everybody, for coming. I understand, I am not the chair of either of the committees. I am the vice chair of the Parks Committee, but being that our both chairs are not here, I am happy to step in. So Jeremy is going to give our speaker the ability to put the presentation up on the screen, and she will give her presentation. And everyone, if you could hold your questions until the presentation is completed, and we will call on everyone.
Marielle, you should have be able to share your screen now.
Yes, it looks like I can. Thank you. So let me try to do that. Okay. Okay, hopefully everyone's able to see that.
We can
Looks
see it.
like, great, okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Marielle Anzalone, and I am a botanist in New York City. I used to work for the City Parks Department, and I was the plant ecologist for the Parks Department. And so plants are near and dear to my heart. I have a small not-for-profit called New York City Wildflower Week, and we've been working to educate New Yorkers about wild plants. We lead free walks and tours in the city. We've been doing this for about 15 years. And most recently, I had a show on WNYC with Brian Lehrer about trees. It was called BL Trees. And once a month, we'd come on and talk about trees. It was fun. So as you might note from what I've just mentioned, I'm really excited about educating New Yorkers about our native flora. And so that's where this website comes in. This was just launched last week, and it's a campaign to vote for an official New York City wildflower. So we're asking New Yorkers to vote on their favorite plant. And 5 plants were chosen as candidates, one representing each borough, and each borough has a different institution aligned with it. So for example, in Brooklyn, there's Brooklyn Bridge Park, and the plant that they chose was wild columbine, which just went through on the screen. So I thought I'd take a minute just to walk you through the website and then talk a little bit more about kind of the education and engagement that we were thinking about, and the reason why I wanted to speak with you this evening. So you can see this is the home page. If you scroll down, you get a chance to meet the candidates. And then this is the Brooklyn one here. So I'm going to click on that. I'm cheating. Wild columbine has a thing for birds. So, initially I'm not super interested in telling people yet what plant goes with which borough. I kind of want people to come in a little bit cold and explore the website. And so it says, click more to vote. Or learn more to vote. Sorry, I don't even know my own website. And so it brings you to page number 2, which is the page about the issues. And I'm gonna show you a little bit. If you go, so these are the campaign platforms. And so each plant has a different platform because every plant does something different. And you can read about the plants. So this is the information about the Brooklyn plant. Again, it's called wild columbine. And here's a map of Brooklyn. It points to where Brooklyn Bridge Park is. And you can see there's some text here that you can click out and read, and then read less. Go back. Oh no, it's not going back. But then you can also see that there are, you can also look at the photographs and scroll through and be able to see different pictures of the plants. This is the plant, obviously in Brooklyn Bridge Park, because you can see the bridge behind it. And so then when you're ready to vote, click on the vote button and it brings you up to the top. So, and then, you enter your email address. So we have one email, one vote. And that's essentially it. I am asking people to do a little bit more because, this part is fun and engaging, but I think it's really important to understand why voting matters. And so I've outlined that here on page number 3. And it's, there's a number of things going on. We live in, a time of a climate emergency. People, since the pandemic, New Yorkers have been really overflowing our parks because those were seen as some of the only safe spaces. And so people really got into the rhythm of noticing nature in a way that they hadn't before. So I think there's lots of ways, and maybe the pandemic reminded New Yorkers of how important nature is for our health and well-being. But then we also need to be thinking about the ways in which we're using native plants as ecological infrastructure. there's a lot of reasons why native plants and local biodiversity are really critical to the health and well-being of all New Yorkers. So it really behooves us collectively as a city to be talking about these issues. And so that's one of the things that I want this campaign to do, is to create a space to be able to have these more rigorous conversations around local biodiversity concerns, policy initiatives. Interestingly, or I think it's interesting, New York City is the only global city that does not have biodiversity policy. And as you may or may not know, the United States is not party to the U.S. or sorry, the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, so which is comparable to the Climate Change Convention of Parties, the COP. So this one is for biological diversity. The United States is the only country in the world that has not signed this initiative. There was the meeting of parties, COP15 in December in Montreal, which you might have maybe seen in the paper, that I was lucky enough to attend. But there's this global conversation happening, and the United States is definitely left out in some ways, and New York City is most definitely not engaged. So my hope is that this can be something that leads to more discussions. But one of the most important pieces to this is the education and outreach component. So I'm speaking to community boards across the city to share the initiative. I'm asking that community boards share this in an e-blast. I can obviously follow up via email to format it in the way that works for you. But also to be thinking about ways in which I can more deeply engage in your community and the neighborhoods in your community board. I actually live not too far away from you all. I'm in Kensington. My husband works in Sunset Park. So I know that area really well. Yeah, so I'm just looking for opportunities to be able to have more ways to share and get more New Yorkers to vote, as many people as possible, to be thinking about wildflowers in New York City. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Folks, you can raise your hand if you have any questions or have a statement to make.
I also just want to say that I'm putting my email in the chat. And so please feel free to reach out to me there as well if you want to follow up with anything.
So Joan, I see your hand up, but you were actually chairing this committee, so you don't need to raise your hand. You can speak at any time.
Okay, could you get a little bit more into the reason for the vote? What, if there is any preference? And also, being that I'm going to also be the minutes person, if you could send the presentation, email the presentation to Jeremy, so I can come up with, and then he'll send that to me so I could come up with some minutes.
Sure. Of course, I'd be very happy to do that. So the idea of the thing that makes it official, well, you know, that the partners include Brooklyn Bridge Park, the High Line, the New York Botanical Garden in the Bronx, and the Queens Botanical Garden in Queens, and the Staten Island Museum. So all of these partners have come together to voice their concerns. Concern is too strong a word, but just to voice their support for, you know, more broad recognition of wildflowers in New York City. You know, I think that we have a fairly robust conversation happening around climate. We have next to none around biodiversity, and they're two global crises that have different solutions, and they are interconnected, but they are not the same thing. And in terms of biodiversity, New York City has a lot of biodiversity, but we never talk about the city in that way. You know, we think about it as mostly hardscapes and humans and don't think about the natural components. But in fact, if there were no nature, we'd be in a heap of trouble. You know, plants provide the oxygen we breathe. There's pollination services that we get from native insects, etc. So this is kind of a fun way to shine a light on some of those issues. So with regard to picking a plant, there are 5 different species, and each species was chosen by the institutional partner. So Brooklyn Bridge Park chose the plant for Brooklyn, which is wild columbine. My only criteria was that it was historically found in the city. And in fact, there are historical records of it growing wild in Brooklyn. But it doesn't currently grow wild in Brooklyn, but it is found in the park. So that was one of the reasons why they chose it. But of course, as you can imagine, New York City historically was really rich with wild plants. That was one of the many reasons why the city was chosen in the first place. Its rich natural resources to sort of set up shop. And of course, access to the water for commerce. But, you know, and so the idea of what's happening globally and extinction and losing species, you know, we lose species every day in New York City. We have no laws that protect the plants that are native. There's no rules protecting wild habitat. And so things that are happening on a global scale are happening at a local scale here. There are dozens and dozens of plant species that used to grow in New York City and no longer do. Sometimes it's because of management, you know, and in the past I've had people say to me, well, duh, it's a city, you know, but cities don't need to be an either or proposition where it's, you know, the intensely built environment. There are lots of opportunities to be thinking about and including native flora in the places where we live, to be able to see it every day, and also doing a better job of protecting the habitat that we have. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and also by coming to Community Board 7, is there any specific that you want from us? A letter of, oh, just
Right. So specifics, no. No, I don't need a letter of support. I'm really just here to share the initiative and just ask that if there are opportunities in your, if there are opportunities like open streets or something like that, where you think it would be an opportunity to be able to share this with people on the ground. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking to do over the summer. This initiative lasts through November. So I have a lot of months to be able to like get on the ground and be talking to people. And the other part, well, I mean, you know, in terms of a letter of support, you know, down the road, what we're asking, once we have the votes in, we're going to turn to City Council and ask them to propose legislation to make the wildflower with the most votes official. So in that regard, it would be good to have a letter of recommendation. I hadn't thought of it, or a letter of support rather. But yeah, otherwise it's really just, I'm here just to share the initiative, and you know, I certainly hope you'll all vote and share it with as many New Yorkers as you can, and just sort of keep me in mind as things come up. I'm also really eager to share it with teachers and get it into schools. I'm going to be writing to the CECs and in hopes to be able to get as many teachers engaged as possible.
okay. I'll probably get back to you, but in the meantime, I recognize Mary Jo.
Hi, trying to unmute. Why can't I unmute?
You're not, you're okay.
Oh, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, I thought I have a couple of questions. I think you mostly answered one. That is that the plants aren't just wildflowers, they're natives to this area, the 5 that are selected. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it looks like they're not just wildflowers because one of them is a shrub. the spice bush is, so it's a kind of a large designation. It could include more than just what we think of as flowers. It is the initiative, does it go beyond selecting, a representative plant? Will it include increasing plantings, increasing wildflower and native plantings in our parks? I've been hoping to get that in Sunset Park for the last, 8 or 10 years. Is that part of what you're doing as well?
Thank you for the great question. This initiative has $0, so we're not doing anything like that, but that's exactly the kind of conversation that we need to be having at a larger city level. I feel like a lot of these kinds of projects have happened piecemeal, and there's no, there isn't a lot of like budget or initiative around a lot of these things, except for like friends of groups, and through community boards, etc. So having some kind of citywide agenda, I think would be really helpful with regard to the work that New York City needs to do. So right this minute we don't have anything like that, but once the sort of winner is chosen, we hope to be able to continue this work with some kind of financing behind it, and at least be able to provide wildflowers for community gardens, and to be able to do things on a larger scale. And then with regard to the plants, so I defined wildflower very broadly as just anything that was an angiosperm. So really, things that people think of as wildflowers are forbs. They're not wildflowers. Wildflower is like a time in the life of a plant. So it's almost like a snapshot. And of course, the flowers come and go, but the plants remain. So anything, so we have 2 shrubs, and 3 forbs. So yes, different kinds of. I was hoping someone would choose a tree, and no one did, but that's okay.
And your partners aren't necessarily connected with Parks Department. Are you connected with Parks Department in this project?
Well, I used to work for the Parks Department. No, I purposefully did not choose to, Parks will know about it and share the information, but I wanted partners that would be able to sustain a larger like email and programming campaign. And so I purposefully pivoted. Yeah, but technically, the High Line is of course a city park, as is Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Right.
They also have the conservancies, obviously, so they're, very well funded, beautiful, beautiful parks.
Sylvia Augusto?
Well, now I was just going to suggest to you about Sunset Park is having something on Earth Day with Partnerships for Parks.
Okay.
And
Earth Day
and-
is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so I didn't know if you could, bring, have a table there and, talk to people in regards to this. The person that is from Parks that's gonna, be part of this is Carly. She's the person for Partnerships for Parks for this district.
Okay.
So, that's, I just an idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Earth Day for me books like months in advance, so I already have stuff that weekend. But I
Okay.
know that there are summer initiatives going on, etc. And I also, but reaching out to her is a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. I'll send you her email.
That would be great. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thanks.
Anyone else on the committee have any questions? Seeing none, Jeremy, Amal?
Hi, I'm so sorry I joined a little late, but thank you for this presentation. I was just curious, and again, I might have missed this, but in the event that a flower is chosen, by vote, what are the next steps that you see happening in the various boroughs?
Yes, so once the flower is chosen, we are going to present it to New York City Council and ask for legislation to have an official wildflower. So New York City has an official flower, which is the daffodil. And of course, that came up through a campaign of remembrance around September 11th. And so that is imbued with a lot of meaning. And it's a really important symbol every spring, of course, and they're so beautiful. What we're hoping to do is have a broader narrative around the city and this idea of nature also existing here. So our hope is that New York City Council will also just address biodiversity concerns. There are only 2 local laws that mention the word biodiversity. One is from 2015, and it's a law I worked on. And the other is from 2019 regarding green roofs. Meanwhile, there is a very robust, climate agenda. So there's a lot of ways to think globally, act locally when it comes to biodiversity as well. And so my hope is that this can be a stepping stone for broader conversation. But yes, like very pointedly, once the campaign ends in November, we're going to, package the information from the campaign. So the number of people who voted and their zip codes and those kinds of pieces of engagement to present to City Council and request that in the 2024 legislative year that they present this as a legislation.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jerry? Oh, sorry. Jerry Chan?
Yes, thank you. So my question is, right, this campaign that you're doing, right, how are you reaching out to the non-English speaking folks that in the neighborhood, especially in the Asian community?
Yes, that's a great question. And the answer is, I don't know. As I mentioned earlier, there's no funding dollars for the campaign. So this is something that we're doing with, zero financial support. So we don't have a way to, do different things where we'd be able to have different materials. I'm going to try to do that though, as I come into different neighborhoods and target people, sort of in the street, which I'm hoping to do over the summer. But I'm also would absolutely love to hear, recommendations of what you think might be best. I don't know if Google Translate is like reliable, but that was the one thing that I've been thinking about. But you're right, this is, definitely a really big issue in a city where English is, a second language for many, many, many people. And I really want as many New Yorkers as possible to feel pulled in by the campaign and to participate. So that's definitely a really big sticking point. Thank you for bringing that up.
No problem. If you walk the neighborhood, they can't understand you. There's no point either. So
Yes, no, absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Johanna?
Yeah, my question was very similar. This is a neighborhood where most people are not English speakers. And it's also a neighborhood where some of the most successful activism happens in person and not electronically by survey. And so, there's a lot of power in going where people are, and people are in the park, especially in the summertime. We have a very, very well used park in Sunset Park. But you will need, and in a sense, having just hands-on active look at it and see activities is even better than printed materials, which then just turn to garbage and they get distributed around the park. But something where you're actually hands-on with a table, giving especially kids something to do in the park. And if you have people who are native speakers of other languages, I think that you could reach a lot of people, and people would be interested, especially if you had examples of the plants and people would say, oh, there's a columbine, there's a spice bush. So
Thank
my
you so
recommendation.
much.
Thanks, Johanna.
Joan, I
The-
see no committee members with their hands up. Should we open it up to attendees?
Yes, I was just going to say that to you. Yes.
Sorry about that. Members of the public, if you'd like to speak, have a question or make a statement, please raise your hand at this time. Joan, I don't see any hands up. I have a question of my own, if you'll allow it.
Okay. You're on, Jeremy.
Thank you. So Marielle, let me just say I appreciate this issue. I'm a gardener myself, and I've been trying to plant native flowers the past few years to get more interesting looking birds and insects, and it's been
Yeah.
working. It's also been an issue for our board. I'm not sure if you have the answer for this. Over the past decade or so, we've been asking wherever it's appropriate that when there's a planted area that they use native species. We asked that, for example, at Bush Terminal Piers Park. We've asked that at various places like 737 4th Avenue. We asked them to use native trees. We're also very fortunate in this community in that we have Greenwood Cemetery, who has their own botany department. I don't know if it's called that, but and native plants have become very important to them as well. That's all they've been planting, I believe. But my question is, when we ask for these things and a developer agrees to it, is there anybody in New York City who actually keeps track of that and determines that they are using native species? Or are they, just agreeing to something just to say, oh, we listen to the community?
Well, I'm going to answer this with experience from my former park days, where I had to review plant lists for anything that would be put into a natural area. So in terms of areas or, parks like, the two that you mentioned, Bush Terminal and Sunset Park, I'm not sure how that would work. I know a lot of plants that are propagated in the city. The city has, well, I guess I have two answers. One, that, the easiest thing and the cheapest thing is typically the thing that's done. And there are a lot of nurseries, parks nurseries that propagate, non-native species that the Parks Department uses frequently. But there is also a Parks native plant nursery that you may or may not be familiar with in Staten Island. It's called the Greenbelt Native Plant Nursery. It's the only municipal native plant nursery in the country. And they've been around for 20 some odd years. And they give out free plants for this exact kind of thing. So that might be an opportunity for you to tap into them. You would have to go and pick it up. They don't do deliveries, but they will put plants aside, and you would have to choose from what they have. So it's not so much like you're calling up and asking for something. It's like, okay, well, here's what we have, that's available now, and then you could choose from that. And then in terms of, prioritizing natives, I don't know what the Parks Department sort of, rule is presently with regard to their planting palettes for parks. I feel like by and large, their planting palettes revolve around things that are easy to maintain, and just things that are familiar. So like bulbs, to me, bulbs are not necessarily easy, but bulbs are just a thing that, a lot of money is spent on them, and they're perennials, but they're used as annuals. So that's a lot of money sort of, whereas if you're thinking about natives, and obviously most of them are perennial, this is a different kind of mindset. And in the long run would be cheaper. But yeah, I mean, that would be someone, I'm sure in Queens, where the majority of or at least when I worked there, again, at Olmsted, that's where a lot of the landscape architects were. And so they would come up with sort of like palettes for different parks. I don't know if it still works that way, but that's what it was like when I was
I
there.
appreciate the information.
Yeah, you're welcome. I feel like I didn't really answer that very well.
No,
but-
you did help a lot where
okay.
I should be going to.
Yeah, and then just in terms of like who's responsible, I mean, in those kinds of plantings, those companies are in contract with the Parks Department. If Parks isn't doing it themselves, and they have to sign a guarantee that the plants are what they say they are, and that they were going to live X number of years. Typically, it's a 3-year, but there is supposed to be someone who is ground truthing the species that are pulled. And sometimes that's really important. There could be species that are pulled that are invasive. It's the same genus, but an invasive species. So, a really easy example is maples. Red maple is native to New York City, Norway maple is not, and it's in fact very invasive. And sometimes at a nursery, they can't tell the difference. And we'll pull, one that's in the same genus, but it's not the right species. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
you're
and
very
Thank you
welcome.
for teaching me the word ground truthing. Any other hands? Joan, I see no additional hands up.
Well, I want to thank you very much for the presentation. It was a good presentation. This was a good meeting. And I want to thank all of the education committee members. And now we will roll right into a very brief Parks meeting. Victor Swinton, our chair of the Parks Committee, was unable to attend tonight. He has work-related obligations, and he did tell me that to tell the committee members that we will be having Parks Committee meeting shortly, and we will cover all of the issues that have been presented to us in the last recent weeks at that meeting. And that's about it I have for everybody. So I bid everybody a good night and have a great week, and take care, everybody, and just stay safe. It's been kind of crazy out there. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Joan, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.